Hi, this is Reflections by Wakeji Kamore. We're in Joshua chapter 21 today. My name is Frank, and I've been taking us through the book of Joshua. It's been amazing. We're in verse 21 today, and verse 21 talks about, I guess I've said this a couple of times, that now we've replaced names of people with names of cities, because we're in the part of the Bible where the different tribes of Israel are being allocated and shown their land, given their pieces of land. In verse 21, in verse 20, we saw them demarcating the cities of refuge. In verse 21, now we are talking about the Levites and the cities that the Levites were to be allocated. And it allows us to see how orderly God is. It allows us to see how detailed God is. It allows us to see that there is no detail that evades God. No tribe was forgotten, by the way. There's absolutely nowhere where you get to the Bible and you're like, oops, these guys were not allocated any. No. God made sure that everybody got their piece of land. And I think that just shows how dependable God is. It shows how in the detail God is, and that He can be trusted with your life. Yesterday we saw in the last chapter, in chapter 20, maybe I shouldn't say yesterday, I should say the last chapter, that He demarcates the cities of refuge and make sure that these cities are accessible to the people. And in this chapter 21, I'm caught by a very, short part of it, and I'm going to read for us verse 43 to 45, and it says, I'm reading from the NIV. So the Lord gave Israel all the land He had sworn to their ancestors, and they took possession of it and settled there. The Lord gave them rest on every side, just as He had sworn to their ancestors. Not one of their enemies withstood them. The Lord gave all their enemies into their hands. Not one of the Lord's good promises to Israel failed. Every one was fulfilled. How powerful. Yeah. God gave them land. He settled them. And then He gave them rest on every side, as He had sworn to their ancestors. And He says that not one of all the Lord's good promises to Israel failed. Everyone was fulfilled. What a powerful testimony. The Message version in that last verse says, everything came out right. I think this makes me see, yes, earlier I was talking about how detailed God is. I was talking about how in the detail that He made sure everybody settled. But imagine, I see here that for me, the only person who knew where the promised land was before these children of Israel set out was only God. But He was faithful. God is faithful to Himself. He does not need human accountability. Yeah. Generations past, the people who had left Egypt with Moses, many of them died. All of them died, actually. Generations and years passed. But God saw His word through. As He had sworn to their ancestors, God saw His word through. It's so true that if there's something that God promised your grandparents or your parents and the generations thereafter, imagine He will keep the promise, not because anybody is going to wake up. The ancestors won't need to wake up and be like, God, you said. No, God is faithful to Himself. God does not need our human accountability, and that should give you so much stability and so much security in who God is. Yeah. It makes you see that if God does not need human accountability, the second thing for me I see is that God can be trusted. The Bible here says, not one of His promises failed, not even one. Yani, what He says is what He will do. God can be trusted. And if He kept His promise to all these children, 3 million plus people, imagine how much it means for Him to keep His word to you. God can be trusted. There's nothing that God says that will ever fall through. And that's what these verses allow me to see. And the last thing I see is also that God is very powerful. The word here says, not one of their enemies withstood them. Yeah. And I think we saw earlier in chapter 12 that Joshua fought 31 kings. And I think for me, what it allows me to see is the same power God gave when they were fighting the first king. He sustained the same power until they finished the 31st king. You know, his strength didn't diminish. It ran the full course. And he was faithful to the end. God is powerful. He's powerful. The power of God does not go, it doesn't decrease with bad days and increase on good. God is powerful. He is so powerful. Whether it's a big nation or a small nation, they fought and they won with the same power that God gave them. So God does not need human accountability. He can be trusted, and God is powerful. God's power can run its full course. It doesn't need to be rebooted. It doesn't need to be reset. God's power can run the full course of what he says he will do. I find it very important that here in verse 43 it says, "And the Lord gave them rest on every side." It's so important for me to see that, because sometimes you can have everything you wanted without the rest to enjoy it. Sometimes you can have everything you've prayed for without the peace of mind to enjoy it. But God gave them the land, settled them there, then he gave them rest. Nobody was coming to attack this. He gave them the peace of mind they needed to enjoy it. You know, I find that sometimes in life you can dream and you can advance so much to the top of your career, to the top of the corporate ladder, to the top of whatever it is that your aspirations might be. But I'm also praying for you today that as you access those levels, the top of this and that, maybe your business has grown, you're at the top of your career, may God also give you the rest to enjoy that top and to enjoy the accomplished dreams. May God not give you so much and enable you to climb heights so high, and by the time you get there, you are so restless, you are so disturbed, you're so distracted to even enjoy the peace of the promised land. But the promised land came as a promised land, as a place, but it also came with a peace to enjoy the place. And I think you and I know how important it is. My former boss used to tell me to pray for my leave days so that I don't get distracted. I can actually rest. Because sometimes you can go on leave and then you end up running so many errands and you're doing so many things, or you're caught in so many things, or you fall sick on your leave days and you come back to work more tired than how you left. But what I like about this is that the promised land came with an access to peace and an access to rest, and they were able to enjoy the place and the blessings of God. May God give you rest on every side when you access your promised land. If you've been praying for marriage, I pray that God gives you a marriage that when you settle down in your house, you have the peace and the rest to enjoy that marriage. If you've been praying for a job, I pray that God gives you the kind of job that you've been praying for, but he also gives you the peace to do the job and to enjoy the job. If you've been praying for money, and when you make the money, may you make the money in such a clean way so that you can be able to enjoy the money that you've made, and that you may enjoy the blessing that has come with the promise. This is a very powerful chapter. I really enjoyed reading it. I hope you can find time and go back and read through those verses again, or through the whole chapter. But that's my prayer for us, that what God has promised will be fulfilled, mostly because it is based on his faithfulness, not ours. God is faithful to himself, and he made sure that he gave them not just the promised land, but the peace and the rest to enjoy the land as well. Have a fantastic day. Enjoy the day today, and may we continue to journey together as we look forward to finishing the book of Joshua. If this has blessed you, make sure you share it with somebody and subscribe to the channel if you already have not. Bye. God bless.